Live yet. Countdown. Yes, we're live. Awesome. Greetings, everyone. I want to go live real quick. This is like a two. The reason the title of this video is going to be TDA secret accounts were real until gatekeepers and government shills showed up, part two. I got kind of cut off the other day. That's why the end of the other video didn't finish. A lot of Virgo triads minions showed up all of a sudden on my channel. I only had like 2 comments at first, and I noticed when I woke up later I had up to 19 comments. So those are trolls. This one individual that goes by the account, you might want to block her out, named Emma Willard and Moon Pie. They're shields or agents for the minions for Virgo Triad. And I was going over why the TDA accounts were real, but the last year when it went viral, the Federal Reserve, there was major pressure put on PayPal to disattach the bank. I heard that it was still allegedly there, and a guy named Peter who contacted me in New York last year claims he has some information. I was just contacted again recently to my email, thanks to that person that told me it's another way that it still works. But I don't want to say, because what these gatekeepers do, like a Virgo Triad, I want to mention she puts out a lot of inaccurate information. She just habitually lies about. And the crazy thing is that I could see where someone is genuinely concerned about scams that are out there. And I used to work for a consumer advocacy agency some years ago that actually assisted people where generally you can't get assistance always from lawyers or people within the legal profession, because many of them, quiet as it's kept, are corrupt. Even if they're on different teams, they work for the bar association. You have to study the history behind that to understand. Here locally in Detroit, WXYZ, for example, we have an investigative journalist by the name of Heather Cataldo. She did a story where these lawyers and in collusion with these judges were through probate were taking houses from people. And since it went so viral and public, the attorney general had to do something. So this proves I already knew these gatekeepers were doing stuff like this behind the scenes when people would die, because the estate is attached to your birth certificate. Your it stays with you your whole life. They make money off you if your relatives or family don't claim it, or it goes back to the state that you were born in or you resided in. Remember that QSIP number is actually real, believe it or not. I'm going to go over some more reasons, but that QSIP number, the birth certificate, no, a while back there were individuals, that one in particular I just mentioned was claiming that it's not a bond. That is inaccurate. That's not true. It is a form of a registered security, and I'm going to keep mentioning that. And no, you do not have to have a securities license to do certain types of things. Remember, licenses are public. They created it on the statutory side is legally to do things within the legal realm, but there's a lawful side that still exists and is connected to the private side, and there really is a private side, because she tried to say that there's no private side. That's inaccurate. Common law, statutory law was created out of common law. You can do the research on that. Equity is still around. It's just more private, but you have to study. There's actually certain lawyers that went to school to study commercial law that deals with private banking and equity law and things of that nature. And there's actually specific attorneys and stuff for probate. So you have to be well studied. When I brought my credentials up too, they were trying to make fun of me. I didn't finish going into the details. I was not only a perfect straight A student in 8th grade, but that year, the school that I went to at the time, Evangel Christian Academy on the east side of Detroit, used to be across the street from the Detroit City Airport, but it was torn down some years back when the school closed down, and they lost our records, by the way. But I had a report card, and it was documented at the time. They had an award ceremony, and I cleaned house. I'm not trying to brag or boast going into my credentials. but I had all A's and B's. I received awards academically. I was the top student in the class. Just to give you a little background, I was also part of a program called DAPSET, the Detroit Area Pre-College Engineering Program. And me and another top student in my class, as well as another student I didn't mention, Nikolai Polanski was his name. I mentioned my other classmate at the time, Naomi Grant, rest in peace to her. Nikolai Polanski went on the secret field trip with us, but all of a sudden I didn't even know we were going on this trip. But Nikolai was at the time was already taking an advanced class in of algebra, because the way I won't go into the curriculum and stuff, but I was basically groomed. I was like a basically elite student and going into high school. I transferred from Evangel to Cooley High School, going from ninth grade into 10th grade. My mother, I explained already, was trying to get me in Cass Tech, but you have to take a test, and they didn't know that at the time. So I was an academic. I'm just going, this is before I started college, whatever. The show I do research. I'm very well studied. I have an excellent memory, and I'm left-handed. And you can look up studies done on left-handed people. So there is some accuracy, despite they were trying to make fun of me and they were trolling basically Virgo Triad's minion, Emma Willer. That's the account. I don't even know if that's the real person's name, because many of these people that are trolls, that are also gatekeepers or government shields or paid agents, don't want you waking up to the truth. They don't want you learning this type of information, because they may work for the system where they're making money off of you through working these voter campaigns. And I noticed that Virgo Triad always attacks April Lejeune, and I noticed April Lejeune happens to appear to be a conservative. So I'm thinking that Virgo Triad is a Democrat or liberal. But I think she's trying to pretend or trying to pass off as though she's a conservative, Virgo Triad, like she did this screen capture where she was shooting guns or whatever. But she talked about some anti-bullying stuff when you go read the description, when you go to her channel doing research. And she came attacking, she attacks a lot of minorities. She attacked Money Boy Films and his buddy Midwest. She attacked Harvey Dent. So she's an instigator. And believe it or not, when the TDA movement broke out last year, when I did my screen capture videos, I could tell she was watching my videos because she was stealing some of my content, like some of the verbiage I was using. So she was coming at me directly, taking shots at me. And you know what that is. Many of you all, if you study hip hop or the entertainment culture, when other people are taking shots at you. So that's why I'm firing back, basically to expose Virgo Triad as being a gatekeeper. I can't confirm if she is a government agent or shield, but she's definitely a gatekeeper, and she's an instigator. And I asked a really intelligent friend of mine, because I'm going over credibility. I went over some of my academic credentials earlier on. My senior year in high school, I was on the honor roll. It was only my 10th grade year at Cooley that I wasn't, had to get a fill out for the school, but I did very well in my classes. When I started college, pretty much along the same lines, I intentionally at the time, I wasn't doing well, but I made a major turnaround. I made the dean's list. After I had a major wake-up call, I had a over 3-point average within my major, like 3.5. I went into self-directed management, and that was the second school I transferred to. But to go over other credentials, I had friends who were former military who shared things with me privately. Don't be afraid to share things with people. I had friends who had secret security clearances. So all this information that I'm going over, I can guarantee you, I'm not lying. I'm not making this up. Now, sometimes I'll recorrect if my information is not accurate or whatever, because, you got snoops.com out there, you got fact check, but I'm very credible individual. I'm reputable. I see someone in the chat with the name Rena. Thank you for sharing your research and love. Thank you for acknowledging and appreciate you. And, so just going over this information is I wanted to provide credibility that these accounts were real. But, of course, when things are on the private sector, I think when a lot of people started trying to do this type of information, they needed to try to cover this up, because the whole TDA thing went viral last year. There's a lot of people that are struggling in this economy. People wanted their bills off, so they were desperate to try anything. And I did hear the update about Heather Ann Tucci, her and Randall Bean. And I think And in my opinion about what Heather did, this is just my opinion, and Randall, that they used the account to try to get a RV. I think that they needed to maybe wait and do more research until they got more information. That there's just certain things that, I feel you don't jump the gun and just do, because they open up like a brokerage account, and I hear the account was supposed to specifically be used to discharge debt. And I did attend a private seminar some years back where we were being taught by elites. I was under their tutelage. It was a private clandestine operation, and they told us at the last minute. They didn't tell us up front, which a friend of mine said could be illegal in a way that we were under orders of national security. So that could mean that NDA we signed was null and void, because they did not disclose to us up front that we were given orders under national security. We didn't see I didn't see the documentation on that either, and they also sold that as a Christian humanitarian project or organization. I'm just saying, I'm not making this stuff up. I have other people that can vouch for me, so that's accurate. It's people that know me personally on here. What's up, Scrums? Big shout out to you. Thank you for joining the chat. So, I'm kind of going really quick right here, but going over some information. The QSIP numbers are assigned to the bonds once they're created. Our BC, which is the birth certificate, or also known as bond certificate, is pledged as collateral, where they create bonds off of it. I took notes because I had questions myself with people who I confide into that have a stronger discipline. Being an academic, I'm inquisitive, so I want to get to the bottom of things, even if it's not very public information. I have very reliable sources. And even if certain individuals out there are trying to argue that it's not a bond, it's definitely used as collateral, so which would make it a form of a registered security. And once again, I'm going to drive that home. It is a form of a registered security, just like the Social Security card, which is called and has the term security in it. Intermediaries, and a lot of people don't know this, are banking institutions and corporations. They are allowed to tap into our accounts privately behind the scenes as intermediary. I was told privately they are authorized to use our auto tris. However, we have access to it because no one was born with your name but you. Even if other people have the same name, your social security numbers are going to be different. So it still identifies you. So you have a proprietary lien over your account. And many years ago, the older social security card said account number on there. I know some people argue that says that it was not meant for identification purposes. But here's the thing with that. I spoke to a banking institution, I won't say the name, and they told me if they couldn't verify my other forms of identification, they would use my social security card as another form to help identify who I was. So it is used. When they said it's not used for identification purposes, they were talking about photo ID. Like if you go to the club or you go to the casino, for example, and they check your ID, but it's another type of identification number as well. And those numbers on the back do have a meaning behind them. I know there was individuals who are trying to say it was just serial numbers. No, they're not just serial numbers. They have it's a reason why they have a numerical sequence and a value. Like with the front numbers, I know the front three deal with your state. The middle two may correlate or coincide with the year you were born. But after so many years, you can check. They changed it. They changed like the format, and the last four digits will be your identification numbers more so. But the first three, like I know in Michigan, it's going to start with the 3 generally because I have siblings that were born in Michigan and I was born in Ohio, and my number started with the 2. And my siblings starts with the 3, and everybody that I know who was born in Michigan, because when I worked at the college, Davenport University years ago, and I knew women, people that worked at the school, and the sister, I won't say her name, I actually still remember her name. She worked in the financial aid office, and she asked me where was I born at, because in enrolling in the school for the first time, I had to give them my social security number. So she noticed my social security number started with the 2, and that's why she asked me where was I from or where I was born. And I would get asked that several times from different people. But even working at the school, you're supposed to be, there's rules too, because I worked there as far as, with confidentiality and with the records, because she was like, I was very proud to mention, she was like, be quiet, because I, was like, yeah, I'm from, Ohio. But I know she was recognizing that my number was different because most of the people were born in Michigan or whatnot, and their number is going to start with a 3. Now, after so many years or whatever, like I said, it changes, but you guys can do research. But the numbers on the back are not just serial numbers. There's duality. There has another implications as well, and there's a reason why the Federal Reserve, the letter on many of them, even if you have blue numbers on the back or red numbers, that letter is going to identify a specific Federal Reserve bank. Now, I never knew that, but I was taught that when I attended this private seminar that these elites were at, and they were going over the education with us privately and sharing this with us. And I already knew this information for quite some time now. And actually, I'm going to pull out a dollar bill and kind of show you guys can do this, give you some homework to do for those of you all out there that don't know specifically. See, hopefully I have some more dollars on me. Up, I do. And like on the front, I'm gonna hold it up to the cameras. You can see this says F right here, even though it has serial numbers, that not only tracking numbers, but also can back as QSIP committee. QSIP is an acronym for Committee on Uniform Securities Identification Procedures, or Committee on Uniform Securities Identification Principle. And there's like another variation, but this F that you see deals with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. So just similar to, and they taught us this at the event. I wouldn't have never noticed this my whole life until I attended that event. See if there's a different number. And this is a different dollar bill, as you guys can see. And this C on the front, let's see here, it deals with the Federal Reserve Bank of, let me see, hold it up, because I used to know kind of offhand. The letters are real small. Yep, I think Philadelphia. Let me confirm. Hold it up to the light and see. Yep, believe. Yep, Philadelphia. Yep. So as you see, and these can back not only as serial numbers, but QSIP numbers, because you study how bonds work and know, once again, Virgo Triad's agents and minions and her underlinks were trying to say you had to have a securities license. But a friend of mine years ago was a stockbroker who I helped wake up to this information, actually turn around and help me out understand some things. And he had a Series 7 securities license and a Series 63 license. And he worked for at one time a prominent business owner in Detroit, Michigan area, who was very famous. Actually, I mentioned this when I was on a private Discord app or whatever. This individual I knew, he worked for Mike Ilitch, whatever. And then his son, he told me, who passed away some time ago, my friend, I spoke to him and told him, and he actually told me that his son actually was more interactive. He knew Mike Ilitch too, but his son dealt more in line with managing the accounts. It was for Vanderbilt Securities. So when we learn this information about the private sector, because you got to understand that, and I'm giving you some powerful information. I'm still not saying too much. It's just leaving enough for you guys to do your own research, but know that I am giving you factual, credible information, is that you don't have to have a securities license, because the elites, the ruling class, use some of these methods like private common law trusts that are non-statutory. That's the actual term. Or sometimes years ago, they were referred to as pure trust. Now, you have to know what you're doing, because there's rules on the private sector, just like the public sector. And then I brought up spirituality, spiritual laws. There's still rules to follow. Like using this as a metaphor or analogy, like Morpheus told Neo in the movie The Matrix, some rules can be broken, some rules can be bent. This is why you have to study and study a lot to understand the differences, to distinguish what you can and cannot do. Because you have people out here who understand, with these people that say they're trying to expose scammers and stuff like that. However, you have scammers and con artists and everything. You have to understand. So there was people that are ill-informed because they have never taken a legal class or had even in high school. We should have been learning this in high school and middle school, but you had civics class. I took American government in high school that went over some of these things, the 3 bodies of government. the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch, and these things, these laws and stuff, that were taught at one time. I know they're changing the textbooks, where years ago the Erie versus Railroad Tompkins case changed the court systems in this country from common law courts to the predominantly most of them became under statutory. You can look this up. The Erie Railroad versus Tompkins case of 1938. It's factual. You got to read up on it. And I suggest multiple websites to have multiple sources. Just like if you're doing a research paper, you do a bibliography to cite your sources to show accuracy, legitimacy, that you're not plagiarizing and you're doing legitimate research. Because this is what I do. I'm empowering you guys. So I'm gonna look back in the chat. I said, see somebody, Kinky Girl Goddess. Greetings to you. Hello, tuning in, Kinky Girl Goddess. Big shout out to you, Queen. Yes, you do. And taking advantage of those, don't have a sovereign mind. Okay. Yeah. You have to have an open mind in this, and not just that, but also this a skill set. While I went over my credentials, another thing, I came in first place in a martial arts tournament years ago. And the reason I'm mentioning this is to show I have versatility. The way you research, when you do multiple things, like a lot of parents that have children that are prodigies have them in multiple activities to find out, to get an idea what they're going to cultivate into, because sometimes geniuses need cultivation. This is why they're pushing Common Core to dumb the newer generation down. This is why I recommend parents homeschool your kids. So public schools are pushing propaganda and different agendas I won't go over, and that's being done intentionally on purpose, because they also take, when newborn babies are born, the blood of newborn babies goes into a database at DARPA, so they have your blood type, and also they know your astrological sign is very powerful too. I discovered, so they don't want there to be the next Christ child, for example, or the next Muhammad, or key figures in history. They want to stop the next Christ child or Jesus or Muhammad figure from being born through, say, because certain astrological signs are going to create very powerful people, who could change the minds of masses, who could wake people up. And that to them is a threat, just like these gatekeepers like Virgo Triad and these other government shills and agents want to keep you programmed, just like the Democratic slave plantation. I just found out that Malcolm X said years ago that I can see he didn't subscribe to Democrat or Republican, but he said that the Democrats are more racist than the Republicans, but yet they're trying to, in modern day society, it's a reason why the Democrats are trying to paint Trump as a racist. Not trying to get political, but just using this as an example, because this all ties in with the influence, the people who run and own and control the media, and also the banking system, and use currency and manipulation to try to invoke slaves over people. So you got to understand that they're taking advantage. They want to keep people programmed because they're making money off you, and behind the scenes, even with the TDA accounts. Now, going over some notes I didn't finish. Already went over. Telecheck had confirmed. Looked up my account, two of my different accounts online. They confirmed, because I gave them some other routing numbers to some other banks that were attached to my social security number. She said, no, I don't see it in the system. I don't pull it up. But she did see the one for Treasury Direct, that routing number that started with 057. She matched up my social security number with that number. And she matched my the number, my social security number with a Federal Reserve Bank, actually of Chicago. That was in her database. And I was like, whoa, so what were they using these accounts for? So they had to be real. This is a fact. So Telecheck confirmed that. This was a representative at the time, because I gave her other numbers to attach to my social, and she said it's not in the system. But she confirmed that my routing number connected to my bank, Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, and my social security number was in their database. It's like, whoa. Just like Willow Green song came out with her channel and said she had a friend that worked for a bank, I think in DC, and was scared, but she went on her lunch break and looked up her information, actually, and discovered that it said private or whatnot, that or what she had to go and she had to use her supervisor's credentials to tap into another database. But Willow Greensong had a friend who worked for the bank and gave her information to her friend. And she was subscribed to my channel at one time. I'm not sure what Willow has done, but she has some good information. Big shout out to her, by the way, because I watch different channels. I was studying this stuff last year before I was invited to Discord. Some more notes. You already went over your SSN card years ago with, say, account number on it. I already distinguished that, and you guys can look that up online. Look up old-fashioned or old Social Security cards and see what the different designs were that they came out with throughout the years. Yet the Federal Reserve and Bureau of Public Debt put out a statement insisting that these accounts don't exist and they were being lied to. And it's not, and I won't blame all gatekeepers or people that work for the government in general. What I'm saying, they don't want their gatekeepers to know this information too. They want to keep this stuff compartmentalized. So keep that in mind. They don't always want them to wake up, because by keeping it compartmentalized, you keep the programming going, because you have these people thinking, oh, these people are lying, or they're part of a radical group. And because that's what they want to do, is label you or try to lump you in some category. And you want to look at people as individual people and judge them by that, like Martin Luther King said, by the content of their character individually, but not as a whole, as a collective. So just be clear on that. So this is why they were doing damage control. They were saying this is bogus to try to cover their tracks, because this went too public, and now they are waging a public relations campaign to try to hide this and cover up any wrongdoings. I see the chat went away. Okay, there it is. Okay, before I go back to the chat, so I went over, this is why PayPal and Amazon were in cahoots, because now they were blocking payments from our FRB and TDA account, whereas before they were going through. So keep that in mind. And what's fraudulent is how they've been using our Social Security number behind our back, and they didn't ask permission, and they have the nerve to block our access to our own accounts, especially for those of us who are already awake. And when I attended that private event and they just lied to us and told us we were going to be funded and didn't keep their word, this shows that this is very dishonorable on their part, very dishonorable, and this is why, people, do certain things and feel the way that they do, because they didn't ask permission. And I feel like, in my opinion, they already have enough slaves within the system, people who want to be brainwashed. They needed to let us, when they taught us, I was under the tutelage at that event, they needed to let us access our accounts. If they want to claim that we're going to do these humanitarian projects, if they were so sincere, especially with this GCR, if they're claiming that it's people who have exchanged already, but yet they're claiming they want those of us, people who haven't exchanged, that are on tier 4, tier 5, the general public, to do these projects, it shows you, evidence right there. Do they genuinely care? Or are they pushing an ulterior motive, an agenda? Just something to think about. If we're allowing people to exchange already, that's not fair, and that's dirty, too. So, like I said, to reiterate, they have enough slaves, people who want to be brainwashed, people who don't want to wake up. Just leave, I say let them be, but let us, those of us who were astute enough, that had the intellect to be awake to this information, to understand that's not programmed, access our accounts, because we have the right, and you have a proprietary lien, because nobody was born with your name but you. I heard this from Winston Sharp years ago, because even if you have the same name as somebody, keep in mind you're going to have a different Social Security number from them, because this still is going to link back and connect with your BC too, by the way. So just keep that in mind. I also mentioned this already in my previous video. I knew a paralegal that was successfully discharging debt using checks off a closed account. And that was real before I think they started maybe clamping down on that. I think there was still a way to do it, but they recommended most people don't try that, because there's advanced things where you pretty much have to be skilled, like on the level of an advanced grandmaster martial artist or stuntman to do some of this stuff. That's just because, these elites, they did that on purpose, because they have the cheat sheet to try to entrap people and get them to fail, because these are elites. Remember, they're the biggest haters on the planet. Some of them, not saying all of them, but many of them, they're haters in their nature. They they're very deceitful, they're methodical, so they set traps in place too, as they use this covert system loophole that they were accessing. This is why TDAs are real, and this is a fact. Be clear on that. These routing numbers provided are just used to facilitate a payment from your secret account because your SSN number is still attached to your BC, also known as your bond certificate, being traded on the Circle 750, also known as the stock market. They also said, let me see, or a friend of mine brought this up. He said, what Virgo Triad doesn't understand too, the IRS audits and looks up regular or average everyday people all the time. They do them dirty filing tax returns. Why is she so focused on people in the so-called sovereign movement or redemption movement if she was so sincere at first and saying, I want to help you guys, and I want to help free you, and you're being scammed out there? Like I say, I'm not saying that there are not scams and people. You have to use your own discernment. If people are trying to run game or present something to you, you always have to brainstorm if somebody's offering a contract or something to you. But, she's very adamant about specifically, and not just her, but other gatekeepers and trolls, to attack people in this movement and claim that this is not real, that is inaccurate. I'm not saying some of the stuff they have a legitimate case on, because you do have people who I would say who are ill-informed. Some people do it purposely. Some people just do it unknowingly, just like I mentioned with gatekeepers that work for these government agencies that have purposely, with these elite people, have kept things compartmentalized because they don't want them waking up to the truth. Wells Fargo was also in the news, remember, some time ago, for using people's social security numbers and actually creating accounts. And remember, the credit bureaus were in the news, said there was a data breach as well. And it's mighty interesting who's doing all of that hacking, who has the power and the financing to do that. Think about that for a second. Who has the time of day and the intelligence and the manpower and a computer powerful enough to hack into a database. So 9 times out of 10, it's an inside job. And so I'll just let you all out there figure out, connect the dots, who's doing these data breaches. When you're hearing these big corporations pop up in the news, Target had a data breach, Best Buy, it's like a new one every year. I don't think that's a coincidence, but I could say that for another video. I'm gonna go back to the chat, get ready to shut things down right here. And someone says, and it went through. If it wasn't real, it wouldn't work. Think about it. If your number off the transaction won't go through, I even call Social Security. Yeah, right. Yeah. But the bank person said there's no way it would have went through if it was not real. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I'm gonna have to scroll down really quick, limited for time right here. And that says, I was asking questions to people who work at Social Security. I asked them about the numbers on the back of the card, and not one person could give me info on that, what the number is for. Okay, I understand that. I was asking questions at work about. Okay, I even called the Federal Reserve Bank. I even called the Treasury asking questions. I called the company who created my bond certificate. Every single person played dumb. Yeah, you have people too who are in the know. They may also be gatekeepers or belong to high-level secret societies. They could be members of fraternities, sororities, because you have other secret societies above the Masons. Those are the main people, who are boule, and black people within the black community like to claim, call Uncle Toms and Sambos out there. But the biggest Uncle Toms and Sambos, what they're not paying attention to, just using this as an example, could be people who belong to these sororities and fraternities. And remember, Freemasonry, all the fraternities and sororities are supposed to link up under Freemasonry. Then Freemasonry is up under other secret societies like the Knight Templars, the Bilderberg, the Club of Rome, the Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission are above them. And, they're basically initiated, so they belong to one, then they're going to be groomed into being to others. That's how they network. So, yeah, people are going to play stupid and play dumb, even if they're in the know. That's what makes it difficult sometimes for outstanding, intelligent researchers like us. And that's why I know this is a fact when I attended that event some years ago, because these elite people in the shadow government, they control things because they don't operate the same way we do in the public. They control many of these secret societies and organizations through private banking trusts, through nonprofits or 508s, and they're set up and structured a lot stronger and greater than the average person. I won't go into that right now because we're limited for time. It says any payments made to nonprofits go through and aren't reversed. The first that stuck for me was my AAA membership, and I'm about to make a nice donation to my church. I'll let you know how that goes. Well, thank you, MAG, and I did get your email. Big shout out to you, brother. I'm gonna connect with you. You know, Harvey Dent did a video on that. Awesome job. Big shout out to Harvey on that. Does excellent research. Good work. I'm just saying, give credit where credit is due. Because some of these information, like Virgo Triad, was stealing information and from me last year around September, October, and was claiming that I was wrong on certain things. So I'm just firing shots back, you know, and she was taking shots at me indirectly. But I have the paperwork and videos to back up what I'm saying. You know, I have the documents. This is a fact. I've had people that know me that come on here sometime that even I'll share it with. And I find certain documents, I'll send it to you. So those of you all who do have my email out there. I have family bloodline of Masons and Eastern Stars, Curly Goddess, but I don't rock with them. I met somebody else like that too, and I probably will have to do another video on why I have this knowledge about them. To give you a little background, I was going to pledge back in college to be a Phi Beta Sigma, and they accepted me as a brother, but I learned some things. I didn't go through official initiation because I didn't have the due money at the time, and I didn't know nearly as much as I do now. Then later down the line, I looked into being a Mason, and when I found out more information about the Illuminati or whatnot, then I just decided not to. And you have to pay dues as well or whatever. I like the camaraderie, aspect, but however, it's much deeper, and some of the lower level people don't know what's going on at the top. So I'm not saying everybody that is part of it is evil or part of the cabal. Some people is compartmentalized, so they just don't know any better. You know what I'm saying? So I would have to say that for another video without going in depth. But this is how all of this stuff is related to one another, how they have spies and gatekeepers and government shields and paid agents. Also look up InfraGard. There's people who can get away with stuff. They have an exemption, but they also are spies, literally, and they'll snitch and report on people. Like I had a guy at my job last year who told them that I was doing YouTube videos and I was trying to actually come to him for help. And what they don't know is I can say his name and people are going to start doxing other people too. And I still remember the individual's name. I'm not going to say it right now, but you're going to get blowback from that because this is not fair to do to people. Gang stalking and targeted individuals. It's illegal to do that. I won't go into all the details, but you can do your own research. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for joining me. Big shout out to everybody.